Have you ever listened to someone say that you have to grind relentlessly if you want to earn $1? Let me ask you something straight up. Do you truly believe that? I'm aware that many individuals repeat that line like it's universal truth, but I personally don't subscribe to the idea that money only comes from exhausting effort. Now let me be clear before anyone misunderstands me. I absolutely believe in discipline. I absolutely believe in applying serious effort. And I absolutely believe in generating substantial income. What I do not agree with is the concept that you must exhaust yourself specifically for money, as if money only responds to struggle. I believe there are higher motives that justify hard work, and I also believe there are smarter strategies for producing income. In this conversation, I'm going to show you what I mean. Here is something I've observed over years of playing at a high level. Individuals who trade their sweat directly for dollars usually haven't learned how the financial arena actually operates. Meanwhile, the people who accumulate serious wealth are not typically trading hours for cash. They are engaging in systems. They are participating in structured games. I personally engage in entrepreneurial structures. I participate in capital allocation strategies. And those structured games are what create revenue streams for me. Let me give you a real example. I recently ordered a customized 2023 Sprinter van designed for client transport and for mobile productivity. Essentially a moving workspace so I can handle interviews, strategy sessions, and content creation without being behind the wheel. The purchase price came in around $165,000, and I negotiated a strong deal on it. Now, I had multiple options available. I could simply write a check and own it outright. I could finance it conventionally, or I could deploy capital in a way that most people would consider aggressive. I was approved for a personal auto loan, though I would prefer the asset sit inside my business entity rather than under my individual name. The structure likely requires around $20,000 down. That's manageable. Separately, I secured a $200,000 business line of credit. Now, this is where things get interesting. The line of credit charges a 5% fee each time funds are drawn. So if I pull the entire $200,000 at once, they immediately assess a $10,000 fee. In addition, the rate tied to it is around 16%. The monthly payment on the full amount would land around $19,000. Most people hear that and panic. They call it predatory. They say it's insane. And if you don't understand leverage mechanics, it would sound crazy. But I'm considering using it intentionally, not because I need the cash, but because I want to demonstrate something important. Interest rates are not always the villain people imagine. They can be misleading metrics when viewed in isolation. If you understand capital velocity, an interest rate becomes just one variable in a much larger equation. Why borrow money when I could pay cash? Because my capital historically produces returns that exceed borrowing costs. A couple of days ago, after filming a discussion about wealth timing, I entered a position in the market. Within 48 hours, that position had produced approximately $192,000 in unrealized gains. I locked in $105,000 of profit and left additional exposure active. The trade doesn't expire until late September, so there's flexibility built into it. To simplify what happened without turning this into a technical trading lesson, I purchased put contracts tied to the S&P 500. In simple terms, I positioned myself to benefit if the index declines. I purchased 600 contracts at $11.64. When I sold part of that position around $14.50, that price difference, multiplied across the contracts, translated into tens of thousands of dollars in profit in less than 2 days. I gradually scaled out, capturing gains at different price points, and kept some contracts open in case volatility accelerated. Each dollar movement in the underlying ETF created significant swings in my exposure, about 60,000 per point, with the full size. That means upside and downside both carry weight. This is why I don't trade casually. I act when structure, probability, and timing align. The Federal Reserve was scheduled to speak, which introduces volatility. So I planned protective stops to ensure gains would not evaporate if the market reversed sharply. That's risk management. That's strategic positioning. That's playing a system, not grinding for a paycheck. Now, why did I explain that entire scenario? Because most people obsess over borrowing costs while ignoring opportunity costs. They focus exclusively on interest percentages, but percentages by themselves can distract you from the broader strategic picture. Consider refinancing offers on mortgages. You receive mail promising a lower rate and a reduced monthly payment. It sounds beneficial, but ask yourself, why would a bank voluntarily reduce what you pay unless it benefits them? Often, refinancing resets your amortization schedule. In the early years of a 30-year mortgage, the majority of your payment goes toward interest rather than principal. If you refinance after 13 years into a new 30-year term, even at a slightly lower rate, you may end up paying more total interest over time because you restart the clock. The paperwork discloses it, but it's not highlighted in bold letters. The focus remains on the lower monthly payment because that's emotionally attractive. People who don't understand the system become pieces on the board. Those who do understand it design moves instead. There's an alternative strategy some use involving a home equity line of credit structured in first position. If income deposits directly reduce principal daily and expenses are managed through that line, interest calculations shift. In certain cases, people have reduced 30-year mortgage timelines to under a decade using the same income, simply by changing structure and cash flow sequencing. The income didn't increase. The intelligence around the structure did. When I traveled to Israel, I remember standing at a counter holding shekels and having no idea what denomination I was holding. I couldn't distinguish one note from another without assistance. That confusion is how many people feel in their own financial systems. They don't understand the language of money. They rely entirely on institutions to interpret it for them. And when you cannot read the currency, literally or figuratively, you have no way to evaluate whether a deal serves you or exploits you. So if I move forward with drawing the 200 Zalhosen line, I'll likely document the entire process publicly. The objective would not be bravado. It would be demonstration. If that capital can generate more than 19 Zalhosen per month through strategic deployment, then the borrowing cost becomes simply a tool. The asset or investment created with that capital would retire the debt itself. Once the obligation is extinguished, the revenue stream continues without the liability attached. That is leverage used intentionally. Eliminating debt is admirable, but understanding debt is more powerful. I could liquidate positions and clear every liability I hold today if I chose to. Instead, I deploy debt strategically while ensuring it never controls me. Every credit card balance is paid to zero monthly. I refuse to carry consumer interest. I use credit as a transactional instrument, not as a crutch. The fundamental distinction is this: I do not labor for money. I engineer systems that produce money. Hard work applied to mastery, strategy, and intelligent positioning yields exponential results compared to hard work applied solely to hourly output. When you comprehend the rules of the financial game, you stop chasing currency and start directing it. Most people are taught to focus on income. Few are taught to focus on capital efficiency. Most are told to avoid risk at all costs. Few are shown how to calculate and manage risk precisely. Most react emotionally to interest rates. Few evaluate return on capital relative to cost of capital. If you grasp these principles, you begin to see that the goal is not simply to earn more. The goal is to create structures where money circulates through vehicles that multiply it. The effort shifts from physical exertion to intellectual design. That doesn't mean you become lazy. It means your energy is allocated toward leverage rather than labor. So, when someone repeats that you must grind endlessly for every dollar, understand that statement reflects a certain level of awareness. There is another level where you build machines, business machines, investment engines, contractual agreements that generate returns beyond the time you personally contribute. At that level, the question is no longer, how hard are you working? But how intelligently is your capital positioned? And once you reach that understanding, you stop being impressed by low interest offers or intimidated by higher rates. You evaluate scenarios based on net outcome. You measure velocity, margin, probability, and control. You shift from employee mindset to architect mindset. That shift is everything. Let me explain this in a way that makes it crystal clear. There have been months where we have run as much as $450,000 through our credit cards. And before anybody panics or misunderstands what that means, understand this: every single month, without exception, those balances are completely wiped out. We do not carry consumer debt. We do not allow interest to control us. I am not speaking about reckless borrowing or swiping plastic for liabilities that depreciate. I am describing something entirely different. I am talking about strategically using leverage to produce assets and then allowing the assets created by that leverage to eliminate the obligation that funded them. That is a completely different mindset. Take this very building as an example. To acquire it, I borrowed a little over $400,000 in order to purchase it for $625,000. Most people would freeze right there and obsess over the note. But what did we do? We transformed the property into a fully functioning YouTube production studio. That single decision now generates between $40,000 and $50,000 per month. So the debt was not a burden, it was a tool. The structure pays for itself and then multiplies beyond that. Now think about the possibilities layered on top of that. I could list this entire space on Peerspace and rent it by the hour. I could bring in a manager whose sole responsibility is handling bookings, scheduling, and client communication for that platform. The hourly rate could easily be $300 without equipment and $500 depending on usage terms. There are days I do not use the studio at all. Tuesdays, Thursdays, completely open inventory. On top of that, we could construct 2 additional podcast studios in the unused section of the building. One side rents for $300 to $500 per hour, the other side for $500 per hour, and it compounds from there. Repeat the cycle. Allow those revenues to cover payroll. Allow those revenues to accelerate payoff of the remaining balance. Or redirect capital, take $200,000 and reinvest it into upgrading the other side to increase earning capacity. Do you see the shift? This is not about a payment. It is about production. Here is the difference between how struggling people and financially intelligent people think. Those who are broke obsess over the monthly bill. Those who understand wealth look at what the asset produces relative to that bill. They are unconcerned with the payment itself as long as the asset creates more income than the obligation requires. This building earns well over 10 times the monthly mortgage when you factor in all income streams. But someone without financial education hears $50, $300 a month and becomes anxious. That reaction comes from not understanding the rules of the game. The same principle applies to Airbnb, Peerspace, Turo, any platform where assets can be monetized. We are living in a time where opportunities to build income streams are everywhere. One reason traditional jobs are disappearing is because the marketplace has shifted toward entrepreneurship. There are fewer conventional employment slots because there are more avenues for the average person to generate wealth independently than at any other point in history. Let me give you something even more practical. My daughter, married with a child now, was earning $25 an hour when she was 11 years old. My son was bringing in $117 an hour at 17. Why? Because they developed skills that solved real problems. They served people who valued the solution more than they valued holding onto their cash. That is the key. Most people struggle financially not because money is scarce, but because they do not invest enough mental energy into figuring out how to relieve someone else's frustration or fulfill someone else's need. If you can identify significant problems for enough individuals and provide real solutions, those individuals will compensate you so well that money ceases to be something you stress about. It becomes a byproduct. Let me share additional examples of the financial strategies I use. I have owned a house in Pennsylvania since 2003. That mortgage has roughly 10 years left, and the balance is only around $104,000. Now consider how it performs. We list rooms on Airbnb for about $145 per night. It is a 4-bedroom home, but we only rent 2 of them because the other 2 are reserved for my family when we visit. I prefer to keep certain spaces personal. Even so, renting 2 rooms approximately 20 days per month produces about $2,000 monthly. That more than covers the mortgage payment. And we are considering adding peer space functionality to multiply that return several times over, potentially 5 or 6 times what it currently generates. The property is no longer just a house. It is a revenue engine. Everything changes. When you train yourself to think creatively about assets, it becomes a strategic game. And speaking of games, let me explain something that transformed my business life. Years ago, I invented a challenge for myself called 10 No's in a Row. The objective was simple: go out and intentionally collect 10 consecutive rejections. Approach prospects, present offers, and aim to hear no 10 times back to back. If someone said yes at any point, the count reset to 0. What happened? By pursuing rejection instead of fearing it, I eliminated my emotional resistance to it. Salespeople fail because they avoid hearing no. I reversed it. I made rejection the target. Over time, I became so comfortable with the process that I could sense hesitation before it turned into a no. And sometimes I would jokingly decline, first just to keep the momentum of the game alive. When you remove fear, performance skyrockets. I approach my monthly 5-day challenge the same way. General admission is $97. VIP access is $297. One of the internal challenges I run is to see if we can sell more VIP seats than standard tickets, even though they cost more. How? Risk reversal. The VIP tier comes with 10 times better than money-back guarantee. If attendees do not feel they received at least 10 times the value of what they invested, they simply send an email and get refunded. The $97 option. Once you pay, that is it. Because of how the offer is structured, VIP almost always outsells general admission. At one point, VIP members were the only ones allowed to ask questions during the challenge, but with hundreds of attendees, frustration grew. So we evolved the structure and introduced a platinum tier at a higher investment level. Only platinum members could ask unlimited questions. Initially, it was priced a few $100s above VIP. The demand was so strong that we sold out 50 seats and nearly ran out of time answering questions. The solution: increase the price again. Those who are serious about access pay for access. Some might ask why someone would spend $500 just to ask a question, because compared to paying $40,000 for an hour of private consultation, it is a bargain. It is all a game. And until you learn to understand and participate strategically, you will be maneuvered by it instead of benefiting from it. That does not mean manipulation or unethical behavior. It means structure, leverage, and design. For me, everything must feel like a strategic puzzle. If it feels like labor for the sake of money, I lose interest. I would rather build something that continues paying me long after the initial effort is complete. That leads to systems. I do not chase dollars directly. I design mechanisms that generate them. For example, every book I write becomes a revenue system. I write it once. Just once. After that, it operates. Our book funnel converts approximately $2.50 into $30 plus shipping. Last month alone, we sold 700 copies at $30 each, plus shipping fees inside and outside the United States. That equals $21,000 generated in a single month from work completed 3 years earlier. Think about that. One concentrated burst of effort produced an asset that continues to yield returns. I labored intensely while writing it. I do not labor to sell it. The system does the selling. That is the difference between working for income and creating income, producing machines. When you understand this philosophy, you stop asking, what is the payment? And start asking, what does it produce? You stop fearing debt and start evaluating leverage. You stop trading hours for dollars and begin building frameworks that multiply value. And once that shift occurs, money stops being something you chase. It becomes something that flows as a result of structure, service, and strategy. I built a simple pipeline that works even when I'm not actively touching it. People discover my content on YouTube. They grab a copy of the book. They share it with friends. And when their copy arrives, they take photos and post them on Instagram. They tag me in their stories, and I repost their story onto mine with a direct link attached, so anyone watching can instantly find the book. Karina operates what is basically a non-stop promotional machine on Instagram. Every single evening she switches on a long-form infomercial-style presentation and lets it stream through the night while most people are sleeping. By morning, we shut it off. We have different versions running for different products. One for this book, another for that book, another for the Make More Offers Challenge. Those overnight promotions are not random, they're engineered systems. While many people grind every day just trying to earn cash, I pour my effort into constructing mechanisms that generate revenue on their own. That's the key distinction. If your income depends entirely on your daily labor, then the moment you stop working, the income stops too. In my world, if I decide to take a break, the money still flows because the infrastructure keeps operating. To me, it's not drudgery, it's strategy. I'm willing to exert intense effort to design a system. I'm willing to push myself to master a fresh capability. Acquiring a new skill is worth sweat and sacrifice. Chasing dollars directly is not. So I commit to sharpening my abilities and building frameworks that multiply results. I'll also invest serious energy into cultivating powerful relationships with exceptional individuals. Beyond that, I treat almost everything else as a strategic game. Business is simply a series of moves. Crafting offers is part of that game. I've structured a proposal specifically for the United States government. I intend to present it to the Department of Defense, to the Department of Veterans Affairs, to the Department of the Army, to the Department of the Navy, and to the Department of the Air Force. I'll continue presenting that same proposal across agencies until one of them approves it. And when that approval comes, it won't be for small change. It will likely involve hundreds of millions of dollars. To me, that pursuit doesn't feel like exhausting labor. It feels like competition. It's a numbers challenge. How many conversations do I need? How many doors must I knock on before someone says yes? Let's find out. Many people struggle when they leave employment and attempt entrepreneurship because employment conditions you to depend on a steady paycheck. The habit of expecting money at predictable intervals becomes addictive. So when someone launches a business, they often focus immediately on how to generate quick income instead of concentrating on constructing something durable that will consistently produce income. That mental shift is crucial. The real question is not, what task can I complete today to earn money? The real question is, what asset can I build that will pay me over and over again? There are different arenas of play. There are investing games and there are business games. I remember someone mentioning they were about to purchase Bitcoin when it was sitting at $30,000. I told them I personally wouldn't jump in at that moment. Historically, Bitcoin tends to slump in the fall months and then climb again in the spring. I'm not giving financial advice, and I'm not instructing anyone to buy cryptocurrency, but if someone chooses to participate, understanding seasonal behavior matters. When prices dip so low that fear spreads and people start selling, that's typically when opportunity hides. When everyone else is panicking and unloading their positions, that's when strategic buyers move in. Later, when enthusiasm returns and everyone is rushing to buy, that's often when disciplined players consider selling. The point isn't the asset, the point is understanding the pattern. Every arena has rules, and if you don't study those rules, you'll constantly be reacting instead of positioning yourself. Most individuals are maneuvering through life as if they're playing checkers, while larger systems treat them like disposable pieces on a chessboard. If you refuse to learn the structure of the game, you become part of someone else's strategy. But once you decide to treat wealth creation as a game you intend to master, everything changes. Instead of being controlled by money, you begin to control how money moves around you. Consider speaking engagements. When someone wants me to appear at their event, my fee is $250,000 for the appearance, plus all expenses covered. That includes private jet transportation, which costs around $11,000 per hour for the round trip. People sometimes react with disbelief at that price. Why set it so high? Because I genuinely enjoy sleeping in my own bed and being at home. If someone wants me to disrupt my routine and travel, they must value my presence enough to compensate accordingly. That pricing structure is part of the strategy. If they truly want me, they will step up. If they don't, that's fine too. Many entrepreneurs design their businesses, so they're constantly chasing approval, hoping someone will accept their offer. I build mine so that only top-tier clients say yes, while everyone else declines. That filter eliminates unnecessary headaches. When you understand that it's a strategic game, you stop begging for validation and start positioning yourself selectively. When I'm on stage, I sell through performance. I use exaggerated, playful demonstrations. Some of you may have seen it live. I teach a concept called repetitive application. People assume that if they can't perform a task today, it means they'll never be able to perform it. That's not accurate. Temporary inability does not equal permanent incapacity. I'll drop to the floor and start doing push-ups as an illustration. I'll talk about the time I wanted to get back into shape and set a goal of 50 push-ups, then reduced it to 30, only to discover I could barely manage 3. I'll lie flat on the stage, joking that maybe push-ups simply don't work. The next day, in the story, I return and find myself even weaker, managing only 2. I continue narrating from the floor. Why do I do that? Because I'm engaging the room through play. When you allow the childlike energy inside you to connect with the childlike spirit in others, you create deeper influence than when you attempt to impress adults with rigid seriousness. Audiences may not be dazzled by perfection, but they are profoundly moved by authenticity. They trust someone who feels human. So I keep exaggerating the story until day 10 arrives in the example. I get down intending to perform my usual 3 push-ups, and suddenly I can't stop. I keep going and going, acting shocked that I've surpassed my limit. The crowd erupts. Yet behind the theatrics, the message is simply consistent repetition compounds into progress. I'm not trying to appear superior. I'm demonstrating that it's acceptable to be imperfect, to laugh at yourself, and still succeed financially. Everything returns to the same principle. Learn the mechanics of the game so the game doesn't manipulate you. Shift from laboring solely for immediate income to constructing engines that create income repeatedly. Focus on skill acquisition, system development, and meaningful alliances. Treat setbacks as part of the play rather than personal failures. Study patterns, whether in markets or in human behavior. Price yourself according to the life you want to live, not according to someone else's expectations. When you internalize that perspective, earning money stops feeling like survival and starts feeling like strategy. You stop being a piece moved around the board and become the one choosing the moves. That's how you win. And that mindset is what TOOD, R.LYTLE stands for.